Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Ahmed's got the night off. Sort of. He's been up all night.
We're Pacers fans here tonight.
I know.
Well, I am. I shouldn't speak for you guys. I know Bobby is. I think John is. Noah?
I got on the bandwagon and look what happened.
I love the Pacers.
Noah's Pacers, diehard. We're all Pacers here tonight, so we're a little bummed, but I'll start. I thought this game was an absolute battle by both sides. I really did. I mean, I don't know who I'm impressed with more. The Pacers for hanging around and clawing back into this thing, or the Thunder for just always having an answer, always like hitting the three or forcing Indy to make like a ridiculously dumb pass and turn the ball over. Turnovers were the difference. Indy, I got to give OKC credit for causing the turnovers, but it felt like Indy had the ability to claw back in this one. And I thought if they did, they might have enough. Halliburton being a complete dud and the turnovers ultimately decided this game. But I still, listen, I'm not out on my Pacers yet. I think they go back to Indy and win that game. And game 7 could go any direction.
That feels likely the way this series has gone. This has just been totally unpredictable. And this is what you could predict, right? The couple Thunder blowout. And again, I don't want to call this a blowout because you're right, Jimmy. They're there all game, and that's what you've come to expect from the Pacers at this point. But the 2 games tonight, and then I'll say game 2 as well, right after the Pacers comeback in game 1. The Thunder controlled the large portions of those games, and the Pacers had a few pushes in them. Never fell behind by 20 plus, which you would call a blowout. But the level of turnovers and disruption and just difficulty that they can force on the Pacers here is what I expected the series to look like for most of it. And, the Pacers, I said this late in the game, their ability to do what they've done against this defense, which I think we're seeing is one of the all-timers, and we saw that for a lot of this year. He had to put it to the test in the playoffs, and it's pretty much been affirmed as that, I'd say, at this point. And so for Indiana to hang around like that and not get blown out, as we would call it that, in a couple of these games is so impressive to me. And I'm not going to rule them out either, Jimmy, at this point. Like, I have no idea what's coming next. All signs have pointed toward the Thunder in this series from the start and then throughout at different points. And the Pacers have just found ways to negate that. And they could do it again here. But the problem, Noah, Halliburton looks done. Like, he's cooked. Playing, but he's not.
The kids are saying cooked.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is the calf injury versus he was struggling. And honestly, when he's not going off against this team, which has been large portions of this series, it's like they look so formidable. Out, like it just really, it's almost remarkable that he's managed to do anything against this team, because when the moments where he looks like he's struggling, I don't even see a pathway out for him. And right now, tonight I didn't think he ever really had the explosiveness that he's had throughout these playoffs, and that's probably the most concerning thing. But honestly, I just can't stop thinking about the 2022 finals and how the Celtics had a great opportunity. With you. Yeah, and like the second that they lost in game 4, I thought to myself, like, I think they just blew, they just blew their chance. They blew their chance to win the series. And tonight just felt like game 5. And I don't know. I kind of think Oklahoma City has full control of the series now, despite the fact you never want to count this team out. Like, they've been remarkable even tonight, but that's kind of where things feel.
Game 4 too, though, right? Yeah. I mean, the Pacers blew game 4. That was the turning point.
That's what we're talking about, Jimmy.
Oh, I thought you were talking about game 2. She said game 5. My bad.
Yeah, somebody on this panel is not a total prisoner of the moment and said that the Thunder were going to win 3 straight, down 2-1, and I can't remember who that was. But yeah, let's talk about game 4 when it was obvious that that OKC took control of the series. Look, I mean, Pacers are on a razor's edge here. Like, there's no margin for error. You can't piss away a game. So yeah, the game 4 thing was definitely probably the death knell. But I agree, Bobby. It's unpredictable. Nobody fully knows. But we'll talk about this game a little bit. We're going to talk about a few other things as well. The Garden Report, as always, is brought to you. First off, it's who we are. If you don't know who we are, proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel. Like us. Please like us. We're needy.
Please like me.
Please like me.
I just want to be. I need to be like.
Things are going to get nuts with a Z. That's how the kids spell it, Jimmy. Coming up in the next couple of weeks. It's already heating up, so we are going to talk a lot about some of the goings-ons in the NBA recently, because a blockbuster deal, how that might affect the Celtics or just kind of set the market in a place I don't think we thought it would go. Of course, we're talking about Desmond Bane. Stephen Adams, thought that was a little bit interesting, just how that might pertain to the Celtics as well. And then just kind of the rumblings and the buzz and what we're feeling as you're getting close to the end here in terms of the season, heading, into the draft where you have to believe some things are going to happen with the Celtics. So
draft week from Wednesday.
The show, as always, is brought to you by Prize Picks, #1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy, folks. Download the app, code CLNS, play 5, get 50 in your account instantly. That's it. Play 5, get 50. Prize Picks, run your game. And we're going to welcome back our friends over at LinkedIn. Anybody here who knows about either a job, or if you're a small business owner and you're posting jobs, LinkedIn is the place for you. All you have to do here is go to linkedin.com/garden. That's linkedin.com/garden. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So as we said, there's a lot to talk about here, but we're going to start with the Red Sox trading Rafael Devers to the San Francisco Giants. Noah, your thoughts?
I have no thoughts.
I'm just kidding. We're not doing that.
Wait, no, we have to do that at the end.
We are going to do it.
I will say I really didn't know the guy, and I'm really sorry for the fans.
She hardly knew him.
Thank you, Noah. We appreciate that. That sounded like it was heartfelt.
Comparisons were alarming that I received.
Yeah, the Luka ones are not accurate.
Someone said Jaylen Brown for Patrick Williams. What do you guys think?
It's not about the return; it's about the money. But again, we'll get into it a little bit later.
I think it was sending Jaylen to the Nets.
Yeah, it's definitely the hot story in Boston. But let's stick with the finals here. You're going to give the credit. You got to take a little bit. You're going to have to assign a little bit of the blame here. How much are you putting on Rick Carlisle for how things transpired here, particularly late? You have Halliburton limited, and Nebhart maybe played his worst game of the finals. And TJ McConnell, who single-handedly brought you back into the game, is sitting on the bench here. And this felt like Joe Mazzulla not knowing what to do with his 3-guard rotation back, when it was White, Smart, and Brogdon, just playing the wrong guys. And I thought that was a problem. You have the 2 critical plays there. I thought the back-to-back turnovers where SGA got the steal, they converted that into 5 points. That went from a 5 or 6 point game to a double-digit game, and that was it. But the decision to sit McConnell, I thought was curious. I think that's the thing that's going to get talked about the most here.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously the one guy you could count on in this game, but everyone else struggled. Even Siakam, who held them in it for a lot of this one too, 6 turnovers. Guys up and down the lineup were struggling for them. And, Mathurin, 2 of 11, and you didn't get much from Shepherd as it's gone in over the last couple of games here. And I don't love those Tony Bradley minutes at all when you get down to that. But at a certain point, you only have what's available here. And the biggest question now is, would you have gotten away from Halliburton, just given how he looked, given how uninvolved he was for a lot of this one, and maybe even trying to save him for the next game potentially, because it just didn't look like physically he had it in this one.
I think now with hindsight, yes, they should have gotten away from him, and they should have had more TJ McConnell minutes late in the game. I mean, he was so obviously the better option for Indiana today. And probably even in real time, I think there were moments where I was like, okay, get TJ back out there, because he's kind of all they really have right now. But you're not going to move away altogether from the guy that basically got you here. You're just not going to do that. And so I don't blame Rick Carlisle for trying to see if Halliburton could get going. As long as he was, ruled available to return and it said that he felt fine to return, I think your head coach is going to trust you. So some of the things that didn't look great today, like when you're playing 11 guys in the NBA Finals, there are going to be moments where it doesn't look great. And I think today we saw a lot more of those moments, but this is why they're here, right? They're here because of their depth. They're here because Rick Carlisle has created a culture where everybody's empowered and able to come in and make an impact. And so, like, what I was cringing a little bit at some of the Bradley minutes. Like, I was cringing at various moments, but I also think it's kind of hard to now critique him for playing those guys when that's just kind of like that's been their MO this whole time.
The Bradley fast break was electric.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I see where you're coming from, Noah, but I'm a firm believer in you got to ride the hot hand, especially, in this playoff matchup where any edge is an edge that you have to take advantage of. And it was very clear. Anyone watching saw that Halliburton was just not himself. I mean, he didn't hit a field goal tonight.
21 minutes is low for McConnell. That's like Pritchard in the Knicks series.
Well, listen, I understand McConnell's limitations at certain points, and I understand what makes him, a valuable asset to this team. And I don't think that they're like leaning on McConnell to carry them to the NBA Finals. But it was very clear in that third quarter that he was like the heartbeat of that Pacers team, and he was the reason that they kept clawing back into it. And every time it looked like OKC was going to make a run and really put it out of reach, OKC came back, and it was a 6-point game. It felt like every couple of minutes. So I was kind of surprised, and I was disappointed that Carlisle went away from McConnell. And I thought he just went away from him for too long. I thought that there was a point, especially there was a couple points in that fourth quarter where OKC went on like their mini runs, and Carlisle's timeouts I thought were appropriate.
I was
waiting to see McConnell get back into the game though out of those timeouts, and he just didn't, until it was kind of out of reach. And that was the part that, I would, like John said at the beginning, like if you're going to be critical of anything, that would be the thing that stood out to me is that, yes, you're a head coach, Noah, like you have to trust your guys and you have to stick with the people that have gotten you there. But I think you also have to understand the moment and you have to make tough decisions. And one of those tough decisions would have been McConnell, you're in, Halliburton, you're out. And I think Carlisle has earned that respect, certainly, that if he made a decision like that, I don't think that it would have been questioned by anybody, at least within the organization. I mean, everyone watching the game saw that Halliburton was not effective in this one and saw that McConnell was. So, I mean, that's something that I think Carlisle will look back on, I would hope. I mean, he might not admit it, but I think he would look back on it and say, yeah, I'd probably go to McConnell a little bit sooner in that fourth quarter.
It's just so tough when so many guys struggle.
It is.
It's minutes in the fourth were awful.
Yeah, it's a tough call.
The passes were horrible.
I know, but Nebhard, again, all series long, he was you could definitely credit him for not wearing SGA down, just making him have to work for every single thing that he has. And that's something that's super important for them to be successful because you need that. So
yeah,
Nebhard's done such a good job there. And you understand why it's been him on SGA instead of Nesmith, who was obviously handsy, and that cost him in that last game for sure with a couple of those late fouls. But really, this game was lost. The Carlisle thing is the easy thing to criticize because that's the stuff that we can understand. It's Joe's low-hanging fruit. But really, this game was lost by 22 turnovers and the amount of points off turnovers. This is the first time those turnovers really, really, really burned them in this game. And then the 3-point margin. You had that game where the Thunder came out and legit shot well. And again, they're not shooting a ton of them. They only put up 32. They hit 14
way more
for 32.
Than they were shooting before.
It's way more. And so you can't lose that battle. Can't lose that battle to them. And then the Jaylen Williams game. So just a series of unsustainable things that made it almost just, impossible for Indiana to win this game beyond, substitution patterns late in the game there. Those things are all tough for them to overcome against a team this good. And they've been surviving with some stuff that they shouldn't have. So again,
I'll say this.
It's too good a team to get away with that kind of stuff.
I agree with Noah. You got to do stuff that's gotten you to this point. I think their approach in this game pretty much mirrored what allowed them to succeed earlier in this series. The way they use guys, the empowerment, all that stuff we praised them for last time we did a show here. So it happened fast in the fourth. Midway through is probably where you would have had to make that change, and things just piled up too quickly against them, I think, to have made a drastic shift if you're Carlisle there. So I don't get on them about that. I actually credit them. Like, if you said going into this game you were going to get what you did from Halliburton, in this game, you probably would have thought the Thunder would have won by like 20, 25. And like Jimmy said, this is a game down the stretch. You had a legit chance to win it early in the fourth, and the Thunder just made a string of plays that make them special, and they are a special team. I think we're going to look back at the season as an all-timer for a team between the net rating, the way they blew teams out all the way through. Like, remember when we were concerned, the field, Noah, you kept saying it. Like, it was more likely the field was going to come out from the West than the Thunder. But all along, I felt like this team was just dominant. Like, they just had a level of dominance this year, and I know it's been a tighter margin than many people expect in this series. But when they flip that switch, especially defensively, it's just like an earthquake. It's turnover, turnover, turnover. They're running out. They're dunking. It's an and one for SGA. It just happens so quickly. So I can't get on them for adjustments, because you would have had to adjust within the course of like a minute or two in this game to stop what was going on. And I don't even know if that would have been effective. I even start to think if they won game 4, would 3-1 have even been safe if this is where Haliburton was going to be physically? That to me is what's the killer here, is that he just doesn't look like he can play right now. And maybe that'll get better by the next year, but I don't know.
Can I say that Haliburton didn't look nearly as limited as everybody else is letting on? I thought he was. I didn't see it. I would say Jaylen Brown looked far more limited, playing 30-something minutes a game for the Celtics than Haliburton looked tonight, in my estimation. I thought he was not great. I thought he was ineffective. Physically, he didn't look awful, and not relative to what everyone's talking about.
So when he got the ball for those three,
like he's out there, he's out there gimping and limping around. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
you look really hesitant to shoot.
To me, I think it's the difference between those two injuries, John, is like my understanding of the calf is the concern of like, if you make a wrong move, you tear your calf. You make a wrong move, you tear your Achilles.
So you're tentative. Yeah.
So I think it might be like, not that because there were a couple plays where I was like, okay, on that play he looked pretty normal. And so I do think that it's more like a mental thing where you feel like your leg's going to give out, sort of thing. I mean, that's my understanding of that injury and why it's so difficult to play against, and why he probably never would have played through it if it were not the stakes, because you're just not supposed to. But again, I thought this game was more about what Oklahoma City did than what the Pacers didn't do. And the previous game, I felt like, the Pacers had it, like they really had control, and obviously SGA had some massive plays down the stretch, but I feel like they still had the opportunity just to play Pacers basketball, like a few more possessions. And a 3-1 lead, it's not a safe thing, but it is, it's as safe as you can possibly have. Like you're in a pretty good spot moving forward. And I don't think this team is relying on Haliburton. Like we saw that today, they almost pulled this off without him being effective at all. But I don't know. It poses the question of like, do you ever bench your best player in this kind of environment? Like, there's very few examples of it around the NBA. I mean, there have been so many games I've thought to myself, Jaylen Brown's the worst player on the Celtics right now, or Jason Tatum's the worst player on the Celtics right now, and you never bench those guys because you have a certain level of faith that they're gonna pull through. And sometimes you're just from watching the game, if you didn't know who was who, you would think like, why is this guy playing? So I don't know that it's realistic to expect him to just not put him out there altogether. But man, it was crazy to see how McConnell did what he did and then not be able to kind of sustain that.
It was weird. Yeah, it was weird.
He turned into Michael effing Jordan again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sparky.
That's coaching, though. I mean, that's kind of what coaching is, though, right? No, I mean, like it's kind of.
But can you think of an example though? Like it's just, I don't know. I just don't think that it's a. I think there's a couple guys that are out of that tier. Miles Turner, he'll bench if he needs to, right? Like the rest of those guys are interchangeable, and like regardless of what your minutes are, like if you're not showing out. But I think Haliburton and Siakam are just like.
I get it. Like, because at any given moment they could turn into those players, right? And who knows? But,
I mean, I feel like Tibbs did it with Cat.
I was just gonna say, and they did it with Brunson a little bit too.
And Brunson, like you saw those guys. Like this isn't.
Well,
look what happened to Tibbs.
That was more because they weren't playing well together, right?
I get it, but like more matchup based. Like I don't like what I'm getting out of them here, or I don't like them defensively in this situation. I think Towns has sat multiple times late in games and been marginalized by So I think that's an example that I'm thinking of just off the top of my head. I'm trying to think who else.
These coaches
Yeah,
get
that's happened
obsessed
too.
with lining up.
I feel it's
backups,
possible Embiid's been benched on an injury-related situation, but they've been irrelevant now for a little bit.
Like that commenter just said, like, could you have figured out a way to just get McConnell into the game? And if you were dead set on keeping Halliburton in the game, you just play both guys. Like,
it was the Nebhard on SGA thing that threw the whole thing, because I think that's been important for them. I understand the dilemma; it's not easy there, but you're right. It's a pretty ballsy move to just sit Halliburton, your best player, and just on a whim. Because we've said this.
That's your excuse, though.
We've said this a million times with bench players, right? And if they did what they do, like in those spurts, in those moments, then they'd be starters. And so, like, you see, like, and I'm not picking on Bobby here, but the big Luke Cornett second quarter, then he comes out for a second stint, and it's okay. But imagine, you're getting that
game 5.
You're just getting that big. We'll all remember where we were for game 5, Bobby.
5.
Yeah, but that's it. Doesn't always repeat itself, and you're just as likely to be burned just because somebody flashed. A bench guy came in and had a hot stint there doesn't mean it's going to necessarily continue. So I don't know. It was easy to say. Are they?
I mean, I thought last game they needed to go to McConnell more too, and they didn't. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
he's had a few scorching stretches in the series.
Before we move on to the big NBA news, is it over, or do we have a game 7?
I'm so done with predictions in this series.
Yeah, you should be, but do it anyway. The viewers like it. The viewers get a kick out of it.
They do like it. I mean, why don't I just stick with what I said before?
7?
Thunder and 6. That was what I started with. 6.
I think we're going to a game 7. I'm not ready to predict game 7, but I am ready to predict game 6. I have the Pacers winning back in Indy. I thought they gave it away in game 4, obviously. And they fought like hell tonight. And there's a lot of things working against them. Obviously, they self-inflicted wounds with a lot of those turnovers, but they can clean it up a little bit. I just like Indy in game 6.
If they got anything from Halliburton and didn't turn it over, you're right, Jimmy.
Yeah,
but they did.
That's it. So talk to me before game 7.
They're sparky.
Do you have hope, Noah?
I mean, I had Pacers in 7, so technically, like, this is probably how it would have played out. But I don't feel like they're going to be able to come away with this one. And I honestly, like, it's just as soon as they dropped game 4, it to me felt like the series was a little bit over. Just the way that it happened, the way that SGA kind of rose from the dead and just like took over that game. I think they probably close this out in 6, but I really want this to go 7, so I hope I'm wrong.
Last man standing, John. Where are you at? You already picked Thunder like 3 games ago, so I guess it's just me.
I think it's over.
I guess it's just me. That's fine. I'll wear it.
I don't feel confident about it. Like, the Pacers have done the unthinkable 100 times already.
Every time the Pacers have won,
I feel great. I feel great about the possibility of being wrong, but I do think just OKC is clearly better, and every time Indiana, even with a lead or barely hanging on and trying to keep a 10-point game from turning into a 27-point game, feels like they're just on the precipice of disaster almost all game long. And I just don't know how long they can keep that up. I do feel like this could be the wipeout, game potentially in game 6.
I don't know,
so hopefully I'm wrong.
The Pacers have just continued to stay in it, and that's what I'm expecting to continue, even if Halliburton's limited. Like, it's just
thank you, Limp Tail. Thank you.
I thought you said limp tail. All right.
No, I did not.
I like that. All right, so that's it. We'll see if we have another one. We'll pop back on here and and keep doing these if we can. Following the games.
When's game 6?
They got it 2 days off.
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Jimmy's gigging. But we'll see what happens.
We're gonna have it on TV at Pier 6.
We'll have it on. Real quick, we want to tell you about our sponsors here. As well, Prize Picks, #1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. And again, terrific time to get in on the action here. You've got all of these basketball games going on. You've got the hockey playoffs, the finals going on. Ride the Brad Marchand trade. The one time I put him in my lineup is the one time he didn't score a goal in this series, but that's okay. So check that out if you want to get in on the action. Pick more, pick less on 2 or more players. Win up to 1,000 times your cash. It is that simple. Use the promo code CLNS. New users, you play 5, you get 50 instantly in your account. Sign up today. Tons of fun. There's going to be free squares and awesome promotional opportunities and make it much easier to turn your sports opinions into real money. So once again, download that app, promo code CLNS, play 5, get 50 instantly in your account. Taco Tuesdays, Freaky Fridays, all kinds of fun stuff. Check it out. Prize Picks, run your game. And again, we wanted to tell you about our pals over at LinkedIn as well. And again, as a small business owner, I know the value of LinkedIn, how important it is to be able to find qualified candidates for your job, whatever it is that you're hiring for. You got business on your mind 24/7. LinkedIn is locked in all the time. You clock out, they clock in. LinkedIn's features can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people. Post it, pay to promote, whatever you want to do. Qualified candidates. 72% of small businesses use LinkedIn, and they say that it uses, it helps them find the right candidates for their jobs. Share it with your network of people. More than 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. So again, post that job, linkedin.com/garden. Once again, linkedin.com/garden. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions to apply. So let's get into some of the major heavy-duty NBA news that started.
Can I throw a quick stat out there first? This is crazy what I just saw.
Yeah.
The Thunder have scored 476 points off turnovers in these playoffs, the most by a team in a single playoff since 1997. The 2008 Celtics held the previous record with 461.
So where'd 97 come in?
Oh, that's just when they've tracked it since.
Oh. Okay, I got you. Got it. Sorry. So since the Celtics.
Yep. Which is great. I didn't know about that Celtics team.
Yeah.
They were defensive menaces, dude. Absolutely.
I love teams like that. I really do. 2022 Celtics. Those are my kind of
Really?
Defense, John. We've talked about it forever.
You know this.
It's fine.
The Rockets this year.
I prefer offensive. I prefer teams like Indiana who can play defense.
It is a fun contrast of styles.
But they keep coming at you. I will say my last thought on the finals, I do have massive envy in terms of style of play. Just simply watching the speed and the pace of Indiana, the way they get it off a miss, even off a make, and just take off. I mean, it's just chaos. And again, that's the good and the bad. That's why you're going to have turnovers. They're trying to play fast. They force the ball into tough spots. Sometimes OKC's a really tough team to do that against. They're physical. They'll knock you off your spot. They're going to cause you to turn the ball over, and that happens. But it's also the secret to their success. So, live by the sword, die by the sword sort of thing. But just to watch them get it and go, and then just how many hands the ball touches, before they even consider getting into anything, just moving around and the off-ball movement. And then you just go back and you watch some Celtics games and I just stepped over half court at the 8-second mark, and here we are, and there's 9 seconds left on the clock. Come set a screen for me, and it's just, so I'm not saying one way is more successful. It's just more fun to watch teams play with pace. So
after watching this finals, John, and everyone really, would OKC have beaten up the Celtics if they were healthy and they got there, or would this have been? I think that's what a lot of people thought, right? Kind of.
That's always how I felt.
I didn't think
they are a little.
Yeah, I didn't think they could hang. I thought they'd have really struggled with them.
Yeah, I think they could have made it a series with more health and effectiveness, reminiscent of what we saw from them during the year. But
healthy Celtics can beat anybody, obviously, but I think the Thunder were better.
Yeah, and the Thunder do give up a lot of threes too, especially in the corners. So I don't know. It probably would have been a series. I think the Thunder would have won.
Yeah. All right. Let's click over to what we were talking about. The big story of the week, just in terms of the trade. I think everybody was floored by this one. Desmond Bane goes to the Magic for the Grizzlies for KCP, Cole Anthony, 4 unprotected first-round picks and pick swaps. Weren't we just saying
first, baby?
Weren't we just saying these days were over?
I don't think they're over. I mean, listen.
No, but I mean, didn't we all say we're not going to see a Miles Bridges trade again? And then we saw
Mikal Bridges. Yeah.
Mikal Bridges. Sorry, we're not going to see a trade like that again.
Right.
And there it is.
So it got me thinking, what was the last trade where a high caliber player was traded for like nothing? And don't say Luka, because
I was just
the Mavericks clearly think Anthony Davis is like the savior for them, and we can, obviously there's a lot of contention around that.
Kyrie.
What do they?
Are you throwing shade on?
They got Finney Smith in a first, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that was a different circumstance.
Because it got me thinking, like, I think we all moved forward thinking, okay, nobody's going to do the Mikal Bridges trade again because you see how it ages and how even, they had an Eastern Conference Finals run, and still I think that was kind of a ridiculous move. But teams just want to get their guy. And, like, if I think we almost value these picks more than general managers actually do a lot of times. They clearly don't think this is good. These are going to be, like, lottery picks.
Jimmy Butler didn't get much.
Late 20s. Yeah, the mid-season trades have way less value. Like De'Aaron Fox, like all those, like there's clearly way less value.
Yeah, but I mean, that's fine when we're talking about a star, but like, is Desmond Bane a capital S star? Like,
no, I don't think so.
He plays
he's better than Mikal Bridges.
He's
definitely better than Mikal Bridges.
I'd say so.
I know, but both those trades to me are kind of wacky. Like, and I get it. Yeah. Like, okay, Orlando got their guy, and they're all of a sudden a contender in the East, and maybe that's really all that matters to them is that
it's similar to the New York thing. Yeah, because they were obsessed with doing the Villanova thing, and they always wanted him to come over, and then they saw him as a wing stopper to beat the Celtics. So all those things were coming into play there, and they didn't give up many players, and that's the scale you're always, we'll talk about like Devers a little later. I know that conversation's a little different, but there's like a sliding scale, right, between giving up a ton of picks and giving up players who are actually valuable. And look at the players they give up in this thing. KCP, who signed 2 years, $40 million, and was awful last year. And then Cole Anthony, who's a bench player. And the value in this deal is going to come from the picks. And if I'm the Magic, like Noah just said, I don't give a damn about the picks I give up. Maybe I do now. I'm still trying to sort out what my mindset is on that. But historically, John, as you know,
one of them was picks.
I think getting rid of the players is a win on its own. So they wanted to get off that KCP contract. He was really awful.
And you keep your stars, which is so critical. I'm thrilled if I'm Orlando here that you keep Franz Wagner, that you keep Anthony Black even, who's an up-and-coming player for them. It's amazing. Jonathan Isaac was a guy who was seemingly available from them, and he doesn't even go in this deal. So you keep your 2 stars and all your starters and all your role guys. Jalen Suggs is still there. So I just don't feel bad about picks going out the door if I'm a team like that, ready to make a stab at this thing. And I know it's a little different, John. And I was actually looking at their payroll. They're like a $200 million tax team right now. I know they cut a couple guys today to lessen that hit, but this thing's going to get expensive fast. This thing's probably not going to last for them super long. So trading away 2028 and 2030, those distant firsts is a little risky in that sense. But you're also going to get stuff back for the guys you're trading eventually too. Like if you do trade Suggs, you're going to get a couple firsts back for him. Or if you do trade Wagner, you're going to get first back for him. So you'll recoup this stuff later, and you have a chance to win the East next year. They're looking at what Indiana did right here and saying that could be us next year. And I love this roster. I thought they could have pushed the Celtics even while hurt, and they did to some degree. And now you're healthy, plus you get Bane.
Again, I don't know. I'm not interested.
This team could win the East next year.
I'm not super interested in having the did they leapfrog the Celtics conversations for next year, because next year's a lost year, but they certainly have. So if you're looking at where the Celtics standing is on paper entering the season, again, who knows what happens, because the entire roster could be gutted or could come back in a much closer to regular form than we think. But you would think that this puts them ahead, at least without Jason Tatum and probably one key other player on this team.
Oh, it does. And plus
they'll probably tick ahead of them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I was just looking at that pick next year that they got rid of, and that was an unprotected swap with the Suns, or you said the Wizards?
Yeah, the Wizards are involved too, and they have the good one because it's from the Bradley Beal deal, so they'll probably get, if they have to be good, right? And they're probably not going to be. So they could swap with Phoenix. We'll see what Phenix is actually going to look like here.
It's supposed to be a loaded draft, right?
Sure, but what does this mean for the market? So let's put it out there. Bane is younger, and again, you're always going to look at we have questions about the 2 things the Celtics could dangle that could have value. And the reporting has all been Brad would have to be overwhelmed to move on from White and Brown. He wants to keep them, and it would take a big deal. Does this qualify as a big deal? Would 4 unprotected firsts and a couple of rotational players be enough to say, in order to get off of $60 million long term, I might do this? Is that enough? Or is Jaylen's market not this good because he makes twice the money and is older? Like, is Bane more valuable? Is it what if this is what Bane gets you? What does Brown get you? What does White get you? What do you guys think?
That's what I'm struggling with.
Because I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. Noah?
So I'll just say, when this trade first came out, I immediately thought this was an overpay by Orlando, and I was kind of stunned by it. And the more I've looked into it and talked to people and tried to understand the situation, the more I understand why Orlando made this move. The thing that in my initial reaction, the first thing I thought about, obviously, was what does this mean for Derek White and Jaylen Brown and their value? But I actually think that it's a little bit harder to extrapolate what Desmond Bane's value does for Jaylen Brown, because the Magic really wanted a guy that could shoot. They wanted a guy that, like, Desmond Bane really checks off everything they could have asked for in a third player, in a third star. And so for Orlando, Jaylen would not have been a good fit. He doesn't space the floor for them.
Not there.
Right.
But it's more, are you willing to give up those assets, would you think, if another team values Brown in the same way that Orlando valued Bane?
So the question is, so what it got me thinking is, nobody was talking about Desmond Bane. He was not a name that was on the trade market, right? But clearly he was available, and Orlando made the bid, and this is what he was worth. Now, which teams are going to view Jaylen Brown as that missing piece the same way that Desmond Bane is a missing piece for Orlando? Because I do think that in hindsight, he makes perfect sense over there. And I haven't been able to identify a team where Jaylen Brown makes as much sense for them right now that they would give up this return. So it doesn't mean that Desmond Bane is like a higher value player or whatnot, but like what are the teams that we've seen Jaylen Brown be potentially, we've heard their name.
You don't think Houston and San Antonio would benefit hugely from a score first wing, two-way wing player?
I think they would benefit for sure, but they're not in like the same position as Orlando. Orlando had to make a move this summer. They pretty much
these are teams that could contend for a title next year with a move like that. Like that's what I'm curious. It really comes down to whether or not people think of Brown what Celtics fans think of Brown. If he's a 1A potential alpha in his athletic prime, if you put the injury behind and don't put a lot of focus in that, it's really only the money that would keep you from doing that, because
every deal is different.
Because you want to do business differently. But if you valued Brown the same way Celtics fans value Brown, or as a top 20 player, possibly top 15 type guy, I still have to think I just don't know how many teams want to take on $60 million.
Yeah, and you have to send out a lot more. Yeah, you have to send out a lot more.
The player alone at his absolute peak of his powers has tremendous value to a lot of teams, I think. I just don't know.
Well, John,
with the money here, because I do think the super important thing, as we've seen with the Final Four teams, is everybody had their stars on rookie extensions, or earlier, and so nobody's got. I just don't know if people want to be in that supermax business unless you've got, yeah.
Like, does San Antonio want to give Jaylen Brown the supermax right now, or do they say, look how many young promising players we have? Our franchise cornerstone is 21? How old is Wemby? 20?
Yep.
They don't have to pull the trigger right now. I kind of feel like Orlando was in a very unique spot where, they already did the first round exit twice in a row. They have 2 good players, but they didn't have any shooting. They tried to bring KCP in. They heard the draft shooting. It hasn't worked. Why not bring in one of the most proven shooters in the NBA over the last few seasons, which I honestly didn't realize that Desmond Bane was. But looking at his numbers, it's pretty clear that he's in a very elite category. So I think, it is just all about fit. And so when we're talking about they can hit Jaylen Brown, to me, it's how badly do those 2 teams and probably a few others that I'm not thinking about, how much are they willing to give up for him?
I don't think he nets anything close to this. I don't. I think people in the chat are saying things like, you got to get much better caliber players there plus the picks, and I don't think you get that.
So that was my immediate reaction to the Bane trade, because I think everyone looked at it and was like, this is setting the market now. You're going to get amazing stuff, because if this guy's worth this, look what the Celtics can ask for Brown or White even. And that's just not how it works. Like, teams have to have that stuff to offer. The player dynamic going in and out is different for different salary guys. Like, I wrote about it that day. I never believed in the market setting stuff. They used to talk about it with the Rudy trade and all this other stuff. It doesn't exist. Every trade's different. So if you're trading with San Antonio and you're getting multiple rotation players back, you're probably getting less on the pick front. Or if you're trading with a Houston and you're taking some bad money back, maybe in a trade like that, you're getting more on the pick side. So like it's always a sliding scale with that kind of stuff. I do wonder what Jaylen's worth around the league. I've really tried to dig into it and figure it out and toss a bunch of trades together. And I did it today over on the site. I try to come at it from a standpoint of what would get the Celtics to move off Jaylen. Like, what would qualify as being blown away? And in San Antonio's case, are you moving on from number 2 in this draft, a guy that could be a star for you on a cost-controlled deal long-term in Dylan Harper, who Philadelphia's after now too, maybe giving up some really good stuff for? I don't see that. We've talked about Amin Thompson, John, in Houston. I don't think that's happening. So, like, you value them enough. You know, they have number 10 in this draft, which is probably okay. Some of the other teams in the top 10, Toronto, New Orleans, I don't see the value out there, Noah, to move on from Brown. Now, White's another conversation, just because I think he plays a role.
Before we go to White, wait, what about Brooklyn? They wouldn't have any interest in somebody like Brown? Yeah.
They've barely started to put their roster together. I doubt it.
Yeah.
There's almost two profiles for teams that could be interested in Jaylen Brown. One, the team that is already a playoff team or already has a lot of talent, but they're missing that like two-way wing that they think can get them over the top. And then I would have to imagine there are some teams that are just going to be desperate to get a star, like Brooklyn. Like, is there? I don't think that's an insane concept. They probably have other moves that make more sense for them, but like if you're Brooklyn, you just want to get a guy that you can start to build something around. And so there might be a market there, but I think it's going to be more like him as the final piece than anything else.
I think that's the hard part, because he's not the type of guy that's like the final piece type player. Like Bane kind of fits that mold, as you explained earlier. Does something really, really well, adds to a young team.
Orlando, but for another team.
Yeah, but Jaylen Brown is like, I don't know. Like, I mean, if Jaylen Brown's a missing piece, then they're theoretically missing like a star or a superstar, and it's very rare. I mean, listen, I don't know what the market is for Jaylen Brown, but if he is the player that everybody says he is, there should be a huge market for him, because it's not often that a player at this stage in his career, and I'm not even saying he is available, but if he theoretically was, it's not that often that it happens unless it's a player that's demanding a trade or trying to force his way onto another team.
Or
it's very
like with a year left on his deal.
Yeah, but you've got a guy that, he signed the max deal because that's the state of the NBA now. And John, I don't know if teams have a choice whether or not they want to be in the supermax business or not. I think at some point they have to be, whether it's their own guy or whether it's the guy that becomes available. I mean, not to mix sports here, but we were gonna eventually talk about the Devers trade, but the Giants could not sign a max free agent. They struck out.
That's always it. Yes,
they traded for one. And they paid for it, and they traded for one because he was available. So if Jaylen Brown becomes available, and maybe he is comparable to a Devers situation here. I think
it's very comparable. Yeah.
Then there could be that team that says, hey, we can't get these guys to sign here. Jaylen Brown's available. Here's 4 firsts because we're not going to get one any other way.
The Devers comp is exact in the sense of it's a top player that you're not sure you want to pay for a long time. And that's what you're running into. And that's exactly right, is you're looking at teams like Toronto, in the MLB, or San Fran, who struggled to land that big free agent. They're the teams that would make a move for something like that. You're always looking at the team that's like, well, push comes to shove, am I going to be able to sign that big dog free agent if it ever comes to it? And the answer in some of these places is no. So those teams have to take a swing if they can. And if all you're giving up is future assets on an ascending team, that's something that you feel a little bit better about doing. But it is interesting because, again, I really don't know. The biggest question is I don't know what either his or Derek White's value is. But the Bane thing made me think it might be more than I thought. Instead of one
I think
pick,
Derek White has
multiple.
a lot of value. Yeah.
I would imagine Derek White's
sure,
market is enormous.
Yeah.
Like there's probably
I think every team in the league would want him.
Would make a offer something up for Derek White. So that's the big thing there. And there's really no it's very low risk. Like he's on a good deal. He can fit with pretty much anybody.
I mean,
to his game.
In terms of present day value, White and Bane are White has as much present day value as Bane. He just doesn't. He's just older.
Yeah, and with Jaylen, I think that so looking at those three guys, the Bane thing I think is such a slam dunk for Orlando because he played the role in Memphis he's gonna play now in Orlando. He's not their star. He's not their go-to guy. He can be sometimes, but he's more complimentary. Like they're gonna something like that though. Well, you feel better about it if you know what they're gonna give you. And so the difficulty with Jaylen is he's played the second fiddle role to Jason for a lot of the time, and you see he can step up into the primary role in certain spots, but it's the same question Boston's asking right now themselves is, can he lead you through this year as the primary option? Because you're trading for a guy to fit into a certain role, and in Houston's case and San Antonio's case, whoever would be pursuing him, it's like we're paying for this guy to be our centerpiece of our team, and that's the role he's going to take on here. Can he do that? And it's kind of a guess, right? At this stage, you don't know because he hasn't done it in his career yet. And I'm excited to see him try it this year. But is a team going to give up 7 firsts and multiple good players and just this enormous haul for a guy who might be able to do that for them? Like for Houston, is Jaylen taking your last shot at the end of games? Is he going to be the guy who runs the offense every night for that team? That's what they'd be giving up to go get it. And that's why they're probably interested in Durant. So,
it doesn't matter if he is. It matters if they think he is. That's really all that matters.
And so that's what I'm curious about. Do teams around the league view him that way? Because that's what it would take to give up that kind of package.
I don't know because I've only been listening to Celtics fans tell me how great he is. And I really am curious what the league thinks.
Who's more valuable right now, Noah, around the league, you would think? Durant or Jaylen?
I mean, Jaylen has a higher trade value, I would imagine. I don't think Durant's trade value is that high because he has 1 year left on his deal and he's 37.
So that's good for the Celtics.
Yeah, I think the Durant trade's going to go first before anything. And probably whoever trades for Durant is off the market as far as being a potential Jaylen suitor. So I'm watching the Durant thing just with that in mind of thinking like whoever team is going to be, like if it's Houston or San Antonio, his preferred destinations, those are two teams that I don't think I
think if you're a Celtics fan and you're looking to trade Jaylen, if you are, you do not want Durant to go to either of those teams. I'm going to Miami.
Right, so it's Miami, Houston, or San Antonio, and so Miami would be the ideal scenario if you're the Celtics fans and you want to leave Houston and San Antonio open for a potential deal with one of your other guys.
If
Miami's
you even
so
want
interesting.
to trade him,
if you want it.
It's funny. I think Durant's going to end up somewhere that hasn't even been mentioned. Like nobody had Damian Lillard going to the Bucks, right? It was all Miami and this and where does he want to go, and they traded him to the Bucks, and it was the first time we really heard much about that.
Well, there was a lot of reporting today.
Oh, you
about
guys
Houston
think that's the first domino?
Something up. Yeah, it's definitely the first domino
for everything. Yeah.
Right.
These aggressive teams, like they're going to do something else. If it's not Durant, they're going to do something else. Like Houston's going to make a move this summer, and so. They might be looking at this one, but I think they have.
Are there a lot of sellers? Are we lining up for a lot of sell? Like, are there a lot of teams that are trying to unload big name players? Because I haven't heard that.
Unload? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, get rid of trade. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Celtics are.
But Desmond Bane wasn't even mentioned, right? Like there might be guys like I'm thinking Trey Murphy, great player, like not being really much of a discussion right now. But if you're a team that's a middling playoff team, like you're looking at him as like, hey, well, he could make us a lot better, like there's guys that are
I was just thinking of him today.
Yeah, like there's a long.
I watched him put up that 50-point game whenever that was last year, and just hitting those barrages of threes, and he can dunk out of the gym. That guy might be the most underrated player in the league right now. It was Derek White for a while, right? Like everyone, he's underrated. He's
People
underrated.
just don't know about him because he hasn't been a part of anything.
That guy is a borderline star playing on a team no one watches or cares about. And so, John, that's one of those guys you've mentioned. Could you go out and get that kind of player for Jaylen or a White or whoever that would be?
Yeah. Noah?
No, I was just gonna say the only other thing is that we have to still remember what the Celtics' goals are in a trade, right? Like it's the goal is to shed some salary, and so for example, this Memphis deal, like the Orlando does not, Memphis did not really shed salary in this deal, right? They brought that money back, so that's why there's certain deals that just might not make sense.
But you can do it in two parts.
Depending, I don't know how much KCP. I don't know what KCP's value.
But you can do it in multiple waves. If you were to trade, if the haul is the assets, and then you can trade off some of the pieces you get back and get rid of those. You can save the money also. Even if you do take some back, you might be able to move it in other places. Yeah.
My point is though, I just don't know what those guys value. Like I think KCP is a negative asset right now, so you can take back negative assets. And maybe they think of him as somebody that can stick around for the next few years. And I don't know I actually have no idea what Memphis's plans are. But I think the Celtics are going to want to make sure that whatever they take back, they're not giving a picks to get rid of that contract later, right? Like that's not the point. So every team is just like it is. I think my initial reaction, my point is just that I think everything is so situational, and that's what makes it really hard to compare these trades. And there's probably going to be some trades that happen this offseason that are like you're like that guy's worth 5 first, and this guy's worth 1, and like it's not necessarily a reflection of like the value of those players.
Speaking of value of players, and I'm going to put this one up there, and then I have to bolt, but I do want and you guys can take this one home for us. But Steven Adams agrees to 3-year deal to go back to the Rockets, $39 million extension. That's $7 million a year less than Luke Cornett is getting next season. So I don't get it, Bobby. But let's put it out there. If Steven Adams is worth this, what is your Luke market? What is your Al market at this point? If this is what he gets you in an extension,
I think it's probably mid-level for those guys, unless someone sees Luke as a starter. I haven't looked into if any team would see him in that role, but I'd guess not. This guy is a starter for Houston, borderline, when you look at how they used him, right? With the double big that they leaned on throughout the playoffs. So that got him back at this level. And, 13's not crazy for centers. I think starting centers is saying Miles Turner might go for like 30 this summer. Whether Indy keeps him or he moves on. Detroit, I know, has some interest there.
Really?
So, yeah. So that center salary is shot way up. And Luke's probably, if he's a backup center, probably going to be on mid-level money, I'd imagine. And that's probably what Al could go out and get too. The question with Al, and I'm starting to dig in there a little bit too, see where he's at. It sounds like retirement's not going to be the way he goes at this point, so it's a matter of whether he's back or not. I'd say if he wants to come back for the minimum, that's going to be what it is. If he wants to go out there and go get more money or an opportunity to win, a lot of it's going to depend on where the Celtics are at too, right? Like they're a contender still or trying to win, or they're in a reset mode here. I think that's a factor too for a guy like that at that stage of his career. So for the Celtics, it's going to be minimums for those guys. Can they get any more than the minimum out on the open market? Obviously, both of them can. But if you're Luke, is it more money over the long term? Because again, the Celtics have the bird rights and the ability to offer more years and all that stuff. That's going to be their, attempt to try to keep a guy like that. If a team goes out and gives Luke 3 years for the mid-level, that's, or 4 years even, you're getting over 20 million at that point. That's where it's going to be tough to keep him, especially if all that money's guaranteed without options and non-guarantees and all that. So I felt pretty good all along about Luke being back. Depends on Porzingis too. There's a thing about him, the Suns having some interest in him today. I don't know how either side would get something like that done unless it's part of a bigger deal. So that center thing's really tricky for them right now. And I don't know where you're feeling, Noah, about who's back and who isn't. To me, I think Luke's back. I don't know if Porzingis is back. I think he should be at least to start the year, but it feels like there's at least an assessment going on of what you could get for him or where you could send him to offload that money. And then Al, it's basically a choice. Do you want to come back for a minimum or not?
Yeah, I think the thing with Luke is that it's almost definitively going to be a pay cut to stay in Boston. Yes, they can offer him a few more years. Yes, they can potentially give him a no trade clause, which very few players in the NBA have. But they have the ability to do that. A lot of players talk about wanting to, they're willing to make, pay cuts, and they want to stay in the city that they like and their families and all that. It's very rare that they actually put their money where their mouth is. Luke, we know, has already done that once, which is why I think it's possible that he'll do it again. That being said, he's done it once, so maybe he thinks he needs to cash in now, right? So that's what this is going to come down to. This, regardless of exactly what his value is in the market or exactly what Boston can offer him, there is going to be a delta, right? Like, he is going to be losing on at least some money. And I actually have a feeling that of all the people out there, he's actually a likely guy to take a pay cut, even if it means like he's now done it for 2 consecutive contracts and he's never going to get his massive payday. Like, I think there's reason to believe that he would do that. But it's an open question. And also there's reason to believe he wouldn't do that, right? Because like, why, it is at the end of the day, it's very rare for NBA players to turn down money. That's why very few player trade clauses, and they've all prioritized maximizing that, right? So it's a question, but I think Al is definitively going to be, I would be very surprised if the Celtics offered him anything more than a minimum. Whereas Luke, I think I could see maybe a little bit more than that. But I think one of those 2 guys returns. That's like, if I had to guess right now, I think one of those 2 they're able to retain.
Who would you rather have, Jimmy?
I mean, if the Celtics are coming back fully healthy, it's a completely different story. I think Al does come back on a minimum deal, and he doesn't want to try to run it back and try to win one more before he retires. I don't know what he would be thinking now. I don't know if it's worth it to him to go through all that if the Celtics aren't going to have a championship caliber roster. The Celtics are thin at center, though. I'd rather have Porzingis. I know that he wasn't mentioned, but if I'm choosing one of the 3, run it back with Porzingis, see what he can give you. It's his last year. Maybe he still hasn't. Maybe he's still a tradable asset. If he shows that he's healthy again, might be something the Celtics could consider midseason. But I think, as far as talent's concerned, when he's on and playing and not sick or not injured, Porzingis is by far the most talented player. So from a winning standpoint, I think you'd want Porzingis, and from maybe even an asset standpoint, if he becomes an expiring and he shows that he can still help a team, you might have something there. So I know a lot of people thought Porzingis was like going to be one of the guys going out the door. I just don't know if that's necessarily the case. I'm not going to overpay for Luke. I'm sorry. I think he kind of is who he is. I like what he adds to this team. I think he's helpful. I think he can help a contending team off the bench. And certainly I think he fits a role. But I
might come
think
down
if
to
the team was
Kristaps
looking
versus
to
Luke.
put him in starting rotation, it might not go great. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can trade Porzingis and get off $10 million, I think that frees up a little more to offer to Luke potentially if you can't keep him at the minimum over 5 years or whatever that would look like. We've gone back and forth on this a million times now with the Porzingis thing because I think we disagree on it. But where are you at now on him?
You trade him if you get a good deal. You don't give up any assets for him. I think if you can get back a pick or you can get back young players, like, he is definitely somebody that if you're trying to shed money, like, I would start there. But you're not going to give up. I just think that they're in a good enough position where they don't have to give up anything to get rid of any of these guys, and that would be my governing principle. And I think if they find a team that is like, wait a second, we could really use a stretch 7-footer who averaged 19.5 points per game on 49% shooting last season before he got sick, like, I'd actually be willing to give something up for that guy. I think you take that, but I don't like the idea of selling low on somebody because you freaked out because of how bad he was in the playoffs, because they do have a little bit of time here and they can go into next season and see how things go. So I wouldn't panic to trade him, but the goal would still be to trade him. Unless you get something crazy for somebody else, right? Like, you don't need to trade everybody. You need to trade like 1 or 2 guys to hit your financial goals, right? So that's how I would navigate this.
The trade I came up with earlier. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think with Luke, like the biggest thing is if you can lock it down long term. I think that would be massive because he plays really well with Tatum. He does things really well in the system. He's a great culture guy, and I have a feeling that again, just because Steven Adams was able to get the $39 million extension, it doesn't mean that Luke is going to be able to get a 3-year deal somewhere, right? Like we've seen this all the time, where it just depends on where you play your cards.
That's true.
Situations arise. Like your value can be one thing, but you might not actually be able to find that with teams. Everybody's over the cap. Everybody's dealing with financial penalties. So there are some challenges in that sense as well. So we'll see. But I could see Luke just being like, I want the long-term security here.
So that's a good point, Noah. Whether he, that sets a value market per se out there, because that's the full mid-level, right? If teams have that and want to go in that direction with Luke, that's where you're probably losing them. I've always been curious with like the mini mid-level, which is like 6-7 million. A team would obviously give that for 2 years to Luke. 3 years guaranteed, I don't know. And that's where it gets to be comparable money to what the Celtics can offer with minimums. Like 20 million is the minimums that they can stack up there over 5 years. 20 million is probably what 3 years of the mid-level gives you if you Luke. Probably a little more than that even. So if he gets 3 years at the mid-level from a team, that's where he's going to have a tough decision. But even Hartenstein, who we watched tonight, who got 30 a year, to go back to that number, Jimmy, he had a 3rd-year team option thrown in there. So like that's something Luke could run into if, they're looking outside, other options and all that. So it's going to be interesting. I think a lot's going to be decided by what the first trade is. I feel like we're going to see that by draft night here, whether it's Porzingis, whether it's Holiday, or something far more shocking. The last thing I want to throw at you, Noah, and then I guess Jimmy and I can talk about Devers for a little bit after that. There's a report out there that they're looking to trade up in this draft potentially. I don't know how they're going to do that. With 28 and 32, I don't think those are super valuable picks to package. So when I hear that, I do.
Now? I think it's a Sam Hauser.
Not move. Maybe with Hauser.
Yeah, like I could see a Sam Hauser plus 28 for 10 or 12.
So I was looking at the Hawks, who keep getting thrown around as a Hauser team. They have 22 for the Lakers. Yeah, so could you flip up to 22 if you trade Hauser or the Hawks, maybe, and give 28 to Atlanta back? But I don't know how you get into like the lottery unless you're pulling off a big trade like White or Brown. So that caught my attention a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't heard much about like specific players that the Celtics are looking at. Besides for the usual rumors that they're maybe going to trade up. So,
well, Mazzulla was in France watching, I think Noah Penda or whatever, the guy with, one of the Paris basketball teams there. I believe he was there watching something in Paris. So and they were obviously in Istanbul too, looking at, what's that big man's name? He used to play for Wisconsin. Can't remember, but he's a player I really like. So. I was excited about that. So Mazzulla is on the European tour right now watching some guys. So that'll be interesting. The guy from Paris is named Noah Penda. I knew it was Noah. There's a couple Noahs in this draft, Noah.
Yeah, there's an NOA Noah too.
Should we rank the
NOA Noah? Who's the best out of the three? I don't know. But yeah, I'm still looking at the draft too. We'll have some videos this week on some guys that they could be interested in too. I'd love, as you mentioned, Noah, for them to not move around so I don't have to look at other guys in other spots here. I'm pretty focused on 28 right now, but obviously there could be some movement here, and I feel like we're going to start seeing some action soon here. Bane just went through, as we mentioned earlier. Nigel Hayes, thank you. Great Wisconsin player. He's playing in Turkey right now. I'd actually like to see the Celtics give him a shot. But yeah, stuff's going to start happening here. We'll go live right when it happens. Noah's got some WNBA coverage coming tomorrow. It's the Liberty and the Dream.
The Dream, yeah. I have a couple of profiles
Dream.
On
what do you got?
What are you
cooking right now, Noah? What are you cooking?
You'll see, Jimmy. You'll see. I have some stories that'll be coming out this week.
Tease us.
No, honestly, part of why I haven't said much players is because there's always a chance that I won't get the interview that I'm hoping to get. So I don't want to
that's
promise. Yeah.
We'll
I
have
am
to
in New
keep
York
it-
right now.
You never know.
I walked past MSG today and I was like, damn. I remember being here just a couple weeks ago.
It was
Tough
1
nights
month
not
ago
going
today. Game 6.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
I was
Feels
thinking
like-
about that earlier.
I guess it feels like a month ago. Actually, now that I
Yeah,
think
it
about
does.
But yeah, I'll
No,
be
do
at Barclays
you have a
Center
favorite
tomorrow.
WNBA
Much better
team?
vibe at Barclays Center for the Liberty games than for the Nets games, I will say. So I'll be happy to be at Barclays Center, not for a Nets game, because those are very depressing.
Yeah, those are boring, right?
Liberty's a great crowd. They won the championship last year, so you can
I love
follow
Sabrina.
along.
No, if
Tried
you
out the
were
shoes.
to place a bet on, not you, but let's say you were going to tell somebody like me to place a bet on a WNBA team to win the whole thing. Do you have a team or two in mind that you think would be a good bet right now?
I mean, by far the two front runners are the Liberty and the Lynx, the New York Liberty and the Minnesota Lynx. So, but I think your odds will probably be pretty low for both of those teams. Like, I don't think you'd be able to watch because they've so far.
I need a
Indiana beat
Dark
up New
Horse-
York the other day, though.
Dark horse would be the Fever. But I bet there's people that are just betting on the Fever because they're
Right.
so high profile. If you want like a crazy dark horse, I would say the Atlanta Dream, who I'm seeing tomorrow.
Okay.
So, if you want to go rogue here, just kind
The
of
insight I need.
Atlanta Dream would be the one, but it's a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
There's
Atlanta
two like
Dream.
historic,
tough.
very dominant teams right now, so
Anything could happen. We know this.
that is true.
Ryan Howard.
right.
She's tough. But yeah, I'll be watching that tomorrow. We'll be following along with Noah's coverage. Of course, she's got
Rachel Reese
WNBA
is
over on
great.
SB Nation.
Me bounds I saw today. That's kind of a
She had a triple-double.
creative move on her part, I guess.
It was a
Me
creative
bounds.
move, yeah. Did you see this whole thing, Bobby?
What's that?
Did you see the whole me bounds thing? I'll send you
No,
some
what was
content to look at. It's like I think people online were like trolling her for getting her own rebounds off of misses, and they were calling it me bounds. I actually didn't look at the original stuff. That's my interpretation of things. But
You know
she
who got
embraced
so
it and
much
she
crap
actually
for that
trademarked
before
it.
her? Ennis
Who?
was the king of that before her. He was always getting crap for grabbing his own
Yeah.
rebounds.
Yeah, you like get like 12 offensive rebounds, and they're all just like his own misses.
Yeah.
It's funny though because the numbers already disproved. Like even if you took away her own offensive rebounds, she was still the top rebounder in the league. So it's like I think it got a little overblown. But
By the
it was, like, a
way,
TikTok.
Do you think the Angel Reese hate has gone too far? Like, do you think she's actually better
I
than
think-
people are giving her credit for?
I think every player's hate has gone too far. Like, why are we hating players? Like,
Well, I use the word hate, but maybe criticism.
well, but it's true. Like, if you could ask me that question, fill in the blank, put in any player, and I'd probably say yes, unless they did some terrible things.
Unless
I
they're on
go
your
by
hate
the-
list.
Is
No.
it too far in the other direction where it's like she actually is more talented, but we're only seeing
I think the problem
know,
is,
joke stuff.
that she was supposed to be like people are comparing her to Caitlin Clark like because of this rivalry and like it's just that's not what we should be talking about. Like she's a very specific kind of player and she has specific strengths and specific weaknesses, and at the same time, like you can appreciate the things she's good at and criticize the things she's not good at, and just keep it at that and not have it be so existential all the time with like all these
Right.
players. So
Well, this is the world we live in now, I guess. So
I'll ask you this before we let you go, Noah. Any thoughts whatsoever on Devers? Because that's where Jimmy and I are going next.
Okay.
Doesn't.
I'm gonna be honest. I literally had not heard. I actually probably shouldn't say this. Actually, I'm not one again.
You already
It's okay. It's okay.
I don't follow baseball at all. I have all baseball key terms muted on Twitter.
Ah,
I don't even know.
so she not only doesn't like it, she doesn't want to even see it. It's fine.
I just
She
want to see
doesn't
basketball, so I
even
mute
know-
out all the others. I mute football. I mute hockey. I only want to see basketball on my feed. I mute everything else.
I'm getting
Wow.
a lot of Orlando Magic content. I'm not mad about it. Still
Would
playing
you
first
ever
round.
go
I
to
didn't
a
know much
baseball
about the
game?
guy, but it sounds like it was a really bad trade from what I've learned. And it sounds like the Boston sports are not in a great spot right now, from what I understand. And again, I'm laser only focused on one, but between
And even
It's
that
not
one's
the other-
looking.
It's not
Looking
great out
shaky.
there. Okay.
it's not great. It's okay. There's been
So this
a
was.
lot of good.
I'll say this before we let you go. This was the second longest tenured Boston athlete. Jaylen Brown now
Brown's been
slides
cheering.
into that. Yeah, behind David Pasternak. So Jaylen, all eyes on him, and we'll see
Yeah.
what happens there. Thank you, Noah.
All right.
SBNation.com. You got Boston. CLNS Media, as well as Celtics blog, always producing
well as
great content there and here. Thank you, Noah.
I'll listen to you guys talk about him. Good night.
All right.
Yes, please do. Regurgitate our takes because they're going to be spot on. All right, Bobby.
This is going to be like one of you and John's
I'm going to try to stay
Patriot sessions. This.
Yeah, we'll do.
I'm sitting
we'll
there.
Do 5 minutes. Otherwise,
it's going to be hard to limit to 5 minutes.
All right, 10 minutes.
I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there yesterday. This went down yesterday, right?
It did. Yesterday, like dinner time, everyone's sitting around. Father's Day. Red Sox ruined. How many Father's Days were ruined yesterday by the Red Sox? How many dads just wanted to have a nice, calm day? The Red Sox win the game. They're feeling good. They're sitting down for dinner. Maybe the kids made them something or whatever. And they get the text or they get the tweet and see that the Red Sox just, traded away their, best hitter. Anyways, go.
So we've talked about it a little bit on here since the, in our chat and all that, since the first base fiasco and the third base fiasco and all the things that led up to this. Regardless of what you feel about all of that, and I think that's where everybody's split if they are at all, because obviously the trade sucks.
Yeah, I don't even know your take, so my take might not be yours, but I am interested to hear it. So go.
Well, I think what happened here is obvious. Is they just got off the money. That's what all this was about, was moving off the contract they never wanted to sign in the first place. And they took a riot at the Winter Classic, if you remember, Jimmy, where everyone's yelling at Henry and got their signs out and all that to get this extension done in the first place. But this departure could have happened a couple of years ago. And so there was turmoil this time. And obviously, I'm sure he's going to become a scapegoat for what went on here this year. And there's going to be some split reactions to this, because I'm sure people will eventually talk themselves into, oh, he didn't want to play the field and he's not worth it at that money anymore. And we had the argument too, should he play the field? And I always felt like they shouldn't have been throwing them all around in spring training and even into the year, certainly here. So you're sitting there yesterday and the notification pops up and it was Robert Murray, who's great, awesome reporter, but you're still like, is this really happening? And then you get the official word and you're not stunned. You're not even surprised, because this is where this team's at. We saw Mookie, we saw Bogarts, and so this was just the next step. A move like this, because they don't want to become one of the highest payroll teams in Boston again. They don't want to be in on deals for guys like this. I don't even know if the Soto thing over the winter is real, looking back on it, because were they actually going to pay $700 million for a guy like that? It's just a disgrace. It really is. And I tweeted it yesterday. They were hanging on to Boston by a thread. I know you were done. I know John was done. I still hung in there the last couple of years, and they fooled me, and I wasted a lot of time over the summer.
I actually am splitting Nesson with some buddies, Nesson 360, because we are all streamers. So I was starting to, come around on this Sox team, Bobby. I was financially supporting them.
There were fun aspects to them. They signed Bregman and they got Crochet. So felt like it was going in the right direction maybe this year. But then they do this. And it's just so callous. It's so flimsy and thrown together. And he's showing up in the cab. And it's just awful. And it's miles and miles and miles from what the Red Sox experience used to be. And that's why they've lost Boston, because this team used to be a certain kind of experience, and it feels like they're never going to be that again. So who cares if these prospects are great? Who cares if they have all this stuff on the come up here? Are they even going to keep those guys when push comes to shove? Are they even going to make the aggressive moves to get back into a championship conversation here? It doesn't feel like it. And whether you think this was the right move or the wrong move because of everything going on, it just sends a message again that they don't really care about this team.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And it one of the things you said stands out to me is that who cares? I mean, they've created, or they're basically breeding a fan base and younger generation of fans,
apathetic fans.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was, not to sound like,
what does it say that no one never even heard of this guy?
Right. Noah's an anomaly probably in a number of ways. We love Noah. No, but listen, 10, 15 years ago, that would be a lot less likely, right? Because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right, Red Sox were everything to this city, before the Patriots, the Patriots obviously kicked things off and sort of brought in the championship mentality. But that, early 2000s Red Sox, the city stopped everything for those big games, those Red Sox-Yankees series, the playoffs, the postseason, whatever. Lived and died by it. Like, if you were a Yankee, like, you were not safe here. If you were a Red Sox player, you keys to the city, didn't matter. And now half this roster could walk down the street and not be bothered, probably more than half this roster. On any given night, you don't even know who's on the pitching mound, and fans are apathetic. It's sad because it didn't have to be this way. I mean, the Red Sox should be, contenders every year. They've never used to have issues with money, and now all of a sudden it's a thing. It feels like this Red Sox team to John Henry is just like the redheaded stepchild, the forgotten, whatever. It's an investment. Fenway Park has become a concert venue first and a baseball stadium second. It really is true, though. There's more. They've announced more concerts this year than they've announced like roster moves that any fan would care about or want to, be a part of. So that's one side of it. Rafael Devers does not skate free here, though, Bobby. Rafael Devers put himself in this position, I would say. Red Sox kind of contributed to that by signing Bregman, and maybe they didn't understand fully how against moving from third base Devers was going to be. By the way, Devers gets traded to the Giants. They have a Gold Glove third baseman. Devers will not be playing third base in San Francisco. He's most likely going to be DHing there too. So don't tell me that it's all about playing a position for Devers. I think Devers ended up having a bad attitude. You can blame the Red Sox partially for that. I think you got to blame Devers partially for that. You got to blame the front office partially for that. So there's a number of guilty parties here. But at the end of the day, Devers, I know Red Sox fans are obviously devastated and hurt because they lost a really good player. But Devers was not like this big fan favorite, like trading Marchand type feel if you're a Bruins player. Like it's not like that.
Those guys already went out the door.
Devers didn't do enough, I don't think, to really get that type of love. And certainly by refusing to play first base, by, really putting up a stink about the DH, didn't put the team first at any point. And David Ortiz kind of basically said it today too. He's like, we're the employee. I did what the employer told me to do. He won multiple World Series, and he's, David Ortiz.
But was Ortiz going to be out there at third base if they need? Like that was what I was thinking.
Ortiz would play first. Bobby Ortiz would play first base.
He was a first baseman.
Well, he was a DH for the Red Sox, though. He started out as a first baseman, but when called upon to play first base for those interleague games back when you needed to, he did it.
So this is where I get a little lost too with this. And, I talk about it with my friends because I'm so against tossing guys around different positions. And I know that's part of the game now more so.
I'm not.
It's certainly part of the Red Sox, right? They're throwing guys all over the field. And I think it's why they've been one of the worst fielding. Watching all these games over the last couple of years, Jimmy, I've seen the ball flying
Mookie Betts went from second base to outfield. You're saying he shouldn't have done that?
He's a special player. He's capable of doing it. There aren't many.
Why can't Devers be a special player? Did he even try to be?
He didn't.
If you're getting $250 million, Bobby, you better play all 9 positions if they ask you to. And I'm obviously exaggerating here, but
I think that's unrealistic.
It is. That's unrealistic. But the point is, going from third to first is not unrealistic. In fact, a lot of players end up.
But why did it have to be him?
Hanley Ramirez moved to first base from outfield at one point. I mean, these guys didn't used to have all this type of stuff.
Those things didn't go well. So when I'm thinking in spring training, and obviously that's what they wanted all along here, right? They wanted him at first. When they didn't want to move on third, it was like, all right, just go to DH. But they wanted him to prepare for first in spring training. Didn't happen.
They lost their first baseman, still wouldn't do it. Cassis.
Right, but that's where it gets trickier for me, because how are you going to learn to play that position on the fly in the middle of the year? I didn't think that was ever realistic either, and I think that's why Corey didn't want that to happen.
Take ground
I
balls.
guess.
Guys
I mean,
show
we're
up to
always
the game 4 hours early, and they stand around.
We're always gonna, and then Campbell's there, and I guess there was something about Devers saying don't do that because the team wasn't prepared and didn't have a first baseman on, and that's where I think this thing went overboard and they wanted to move him. So we'll always disagree, I'm sure.
Well, that's the Devers blame. If we're doing blame pie here, we should do a Red Sox blame pie. I wish I told Ahmed to make one, but it would probably be 33% Devers, 33%. Actually, it would be like 50% John Henry, probably 30% Devers, and maybe 20% Breslow. I think word's starting to trickle out now that Breslow might not have a good handle of things. I know there was a Yahoo article that came out today by June Lee, and basically said that Breslow came in, hired this company to basically, downsize the front office, fire people essentially. I don't think that certainly didn't go over well internally. And it feels like he might not have the respect of some of the people in that organization. And so that's part of it. And then I don't know who to blame fully for the actual return on the trade. Breslow obviously gets a huge part of it. He's the
he gets his Mookie trade.
The guy pulling the strings. But if John Henry said, "Hey, listen, we don't want to pay a penny of this contract. You need to get rid of Devers and take nothing back," that limits a lot of your options. That limits a lot of teams. That limits a lot of what teams are going to send back to you because they have to fork over $250 million now. And so if John Henry was like, "Yo, we'll eat half of it. Just make sure you get some talent back when you get rid of this guy," I think Red Sox fans would be a lot happier with the return. But if John Henry is just dead set on stripping this team of whatever he has to spend on them, then they're going to consistently find themselves in this position. Fans are going to consistently be upset. And eventually the Red Sox are going to become more and more irrelevant. And that's what we're having here.
They're irrelevant because you don't recognize the players. You're certainly not invested in a team that's on the championship mix ever. And they're barely in the playoff mix anymore in any given year. I know they're floating around it again this season, but they're probably not going to end there. The comments about maybe being in a better position at the end of the year than they are now is laughable from the press conference today. And you always, when you get those two guys up there, Breslow throwing around the big words and Sam Kennedy saying all his stuff about their track record and all that, they just sound so absurd. And none of the stuff they say really means anything.
You can't listen to anything they say. It's so bad.
And who's even listening anymore? That's the thing. This team's so irrelevant. And I know John's gone off the bandwagon. A few of us, I guess you included, Jimmy, this year, keep an eye on them, say, oh, maybe things could go a certain type of way. But the experience isn't the same. We're hoping for some percentage of what it used to be. Every time the ballpark fills up like it did over the weekend, you're like, oh, wow. But it's nothing compared to what it used to be.
No, it's nothing compared to
what it
used to be.
never goes anywhere.
The Red Sox-Yankees rivalry is not quite what it used to be. And I don't know, I think there's just too many other distractions going on maybe in the world right now. But
and this is baseball, too. It's a baseball thing, but it's a Red Sox thing.
It is a Red Sox thing, and it's a shame because the timing of it off, and I think Breslow probably admitted to it today, the timing of it was not great. The Red Sox are starting to put some wins together here. They're above 500. They're maybe going to make a little bit of noise here in the AL East, and maybe they can sneak into the playoffs. You go and trade your best hitter, you get basically essentially no offense back in return for it. I mean, they got a couple of young prospects that it's too early to say. I mean,
but no one knows who these guys are. You look at those, even the numbers they have, and you're like, oh,
Kyle Harrison, supposed to be a really good pitcher, but listen, I mean, if San Francisco's giving up on these guys, that's when you start to scratch your head and wonder what could it be. But Kyle Harrison, left-hand pitcher, and then the other prospect was James Tibbs, who was a first-round pick last year for them. So it's obviously very, very early on in his career. And
it's like picks in the NBA. And you know how I feel about picks.
It's actually never go anywhere. It's like picks in hockey. It's like these guys you might not hear of for 5 years. It's really taking a stab at some of these guys. First rounders might be a little bit different. NBA, you're gonna see something hopefully that year, depending if it's a low pick. But baseball, it's just a completely different thing. And so that's why you don't really ever get too fired up about prospects in baseball until they're really on the cusp of getting into the majors. So it's disappointing, definitely.
It's disappointing. And the player, you mentioned it, Jimmy, not a fan favorite quite to the degree of Mookie or any of these guys that became that role. He became that role, filled that role once all those guys left. But man, was he fun to watch hit. And he always came through in big moments. The Yankee killing thing was awesome too, as a layer there. And did have a jovial, almost Ortiz-like personality for at least the start of his career. I know this year it took a turn in the other direction, but
yeah, you got sour.
The guy could just hit. The guy could just hit like almost no one you've ever seen in this uniform. And there's been some great ones in this uniform. Now, who are you looking forward to watching when you go into the ballpark? It's the
you got to hope that
the young guys.
You got to hope that the young guys, like Roman Anthony had his first career home run tonight. Obviously, Duran's been a guy that they've followed, and you've got, Christian Campbell is coming up. You've got they're banking on this young group of players to come in and, Rafaela and all these guys. So that's what you have to hope. But the scary thing is, Bobby, is what are the Red Sox going to do with these guys when they got to re-sign them? Are they going to do it? Or are they going to trade them? Are they going to let them walk? And there's no reason to believe in this ownership group currently. And that's why people are clamoring for Henry to sell the team.
That's why I can't get upset about the first base thing either. Like, it's, yes, on virtue, maybe he should have played first. But this is a bigger, deeper issue than that. This is the ownership group and the front office, frankly, over a couple different groups here, not knowing what the hell they're doing. I have zero confidence in Breslow, even though he went out and got Crochet and made a couple other moves here. So,
got Crochet, got Bregman. I mean, those are two good moves so far, but
even Bregman was like a fake 1-year deal with an opt-out that he could just leave after this year.
We'll see what
look
happens.
Like they did something.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Bregman deal, and he's been hurt, obviously. So
they're so hamstrung by ownership.
That's the thing is, I mean, look at Chaim Bloom, look at, all these guys who have come in, and you just wonder how much power did they actually have? How much were they actually really able to do? Or is John Henry basically telling them, you can't spend this, you can't spend that, you can't do this, you can't do that. We're looking at the bottom line number here, and none of this makes sense. So I have a hard time sometimes blame-pying it out because I'm not sure who's really preventing this from happening. Yeah. Money doesn't matter to me at all in baseball. Baseball is the sport where the ownership, if the owners don't want to pay or can't pay, get the hell out of there. Because
and the Dodgers have everyone in the league.
Payments. What?
And the Dodgers have everyone in the league because they will pay.
They will pay and they win, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what it comes down to. And I'm not saying go out there and spend like the Dodgers or go spend $750 million on one player. But you're the Boston Red Sox. You should have a top 5 payroll in the majors basically every single year. You should be putting a playoff contending team out there every single year. Congrats on building up some young prospects, but bring in some talent to pair with these guys, and let's do this thing. Like, what's the problem here? You've gotten rid of more than what you've brought in terms of talent, and it's just unacceptable. So
they've let Devers, Bogarts.
I hope that John Henry cares enough to, listen to some of the criticism that he's getting, but I'm just not sure. I'm just really not sure.
It's been 5 years of it, and they haven't listened. And for them to do this in this manner, and
they're
just slap
Liverpool
the
now,
fans
Bobby.
in the face, yeah.
I mean,
it says
Liverpool.
a lot. It says a lot about where they're at and where they've been at for a long time now, that this is how they handled the situation. And this is how it went down on a Sunday, on Father's Day, on a day that you swept the Yankees. You get this heart, soul-crushing headline to end the day, just on a dime. And he's showing up in the cab, and we'll see what he says tomorrow. There's no real goodbye. They're on the press conference today talking about
how. Say much. Honestly, he's never really been a guy that's. Again, I think that's why. I think if you're the Red Sox, you miss. If you're a Red Sox fan, I think you miss the production more than you miss the player. I don't think this is a lot of massive. Devers.
I loved him as a player.
I think you're in the minority. I really do. I don't think a lot of people are gonna lose sleep over not having Devers.
But it was the collective, right? It was Betts, it was Bogarts, it was him together. It was the whole dynamic, that whole crew from those years. And that they're all gone now, and that you have what you have left for 3 of the best players in the league. or I guess Bogarts could be a different conversation, but
the return's been really, really bad, and I think that's ultimately what's going to hurt them in the end. But again, if Henry's saying we're not paying any of this money, trade Devers, it hurts Breslow's, options. So maybe he could have called around more. Maybe he could have worked the deals. Maybe they didn't have to get rid of Devers yesterday. I don't know why yesterday was the day. I don't know if San Francisco was going to pull their offer and they had something else waiting. I highly doubt it. So I don't really know what went into all that behind the scenes stuff. And
Chris Sale even. Like, that was another thing. Just take the money. Let us get off the money.
That one backfired.
So, this is the Red Sox experience. I'm done. We'll see. Maybe someone will change my mind down the line. But, I'm out after this.
What I'm interested to see, they got out of – so they got out of Devers. I didn't hear any of the press conference earlier tonight, but they now have a lot of money to spend. They have a lot of money to spend.
You think they're going to spend it?
They have the ability to take on players now before the deadline if they find themselves in that position. I just don't want any excuses. I won't accept excuses. I will not be bullshitted. You cannot bullshit me, cannot gaslight me. If you're a Red Sox fan, you absolutely cannot support or stand for what this team's been doing. When Sam Kennedy gets up there on the Zoom call and starts BSing about nonsense, do not stand for that stuff. A good fan knows when to support his team, and a good fan knows when he needs to take a stand and, maybe support the team in a different fashion, meaning don't show up to the games and be a little bit critical. You can still be a fan that way. It doesn't always have to be just pom-poms. You can constructive criticism. You can be very critical of your team, because at the end of the day, if they wrong you as a fan, then they deserve to be, called out for that. And I think that's what's happening with this Red Sox roster. So that's all I've got on the Red Sox, Bob.
Yeah, it sucks too, because baseball has been interesting the last couple of years. They've been some fun teams, some fun playoff, fun runs, and they just haven't been part of it.
I want to like baseball again. I want to like the Red Sox. I'm like putting it on as like background noise. I'm trying to get myself into it. And then they just take 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, so it sucks, but we'll see. I'm not completely out yet. I want to see if there's another domino that's going to fall. Maybe they will bring in somebody. They still need a first baseman. So
it's going to take something big to pull people back. It's a Soto thing. They had a chance there, and Ohtani when that was a thing, and there were a couple opportunities there where they really could have let things go. Yeah, but they're not in that business anymore. They're trying to do the prospect thing and the value of, and analytics and all that. And that's just not going to get a city bought in again. You got to spend, you got to have stars, you got to have people who are recognizable. And I don't think that's what they're doing.
I think it was a good run for, the Henry group. And I think the run has ended. And I think
hopefully it ends at some point soon. I think that's what it's time for. They need someone else in there. And, maybe it'll make sense for him business-wise. I don't think that he's going to do it, but I think a lot of people would be celebrating that if it happened. And we'll see. Celtics, this is what everyone's looking at with their ownership group, too. That's why it gets so much attention. That's why we've been so interested in it. This can be the experience if you have a bad owner. Unfortunately, the Celtics have had a pretty good group going back a little while now. So that should get done soon. We'll see where that goes in the offseason here as well. We will be live with any breaking news, any developments. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I'm going to say one last thing. Shout out Brad Marchand and the Florida Panthers. I am fully on board the Thurs. Marchand's playing unbelievable. I want him to win every award that he can possibly win. And it's been actually a lot of fun watching him kind of rejuvenated on this Panthers team. And I was in the building for Bruins-Panthers Game 7, and that was a heartbreaking loss for me. But watching Marchand do what he's been doing in Florida is helping me get over that a little bit. So I hope that they can close it out. And I don't know if it's going to be a Bork-like celebration, but do not be surprised, Bobby, if the Stanley Cup makes its way. If the Panthers pull this off, do not be surprised if the Stanley Cup makes its way to Boston, maybe Charlestown, where Marchand calls, or at least did call home, and I imagine still has a home there. So.
He's going to bring it back, celebrate.
Yeah, I would too. I'm telling you. I'd be surprised.
Miami's not bad either, though. So, yeah, I'll be happy to see him win. You're happy for a guy like that. No real bad blood.
He's my all-time favorite Bruin, not just because of this little stupid run he's on now, but I just love what Marchand. I mean, he's just the attitude you want on a guy on your team. Players hate to play against him, but they love him when he's on his team. I think the Panthers are a good example of that, to be honest. And if you had a team full of guys with that attitude and that desire to win and play hard and just do whatever it takes, then you'd be in pretty good shape. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm going to be rooting for Devers. We'll see what happens with the Celtics here.
I'm not rooting for Devers, dude. I'm not rooting for Devers.
I am.
What's to root for? He's going to be okay. Devers is going to be okay. He doesn't need any more people to root for. You need to figure out what the hell's going on in Boston.
Yeah. Hey, they'll be playing the Friday. That'll be interesting. All right, that's it for us here. Again, we'll be live. Any breaking news this week? I think things are really going to start to pop off here very quickly, and this finals could be over on Thursday. So look for Friday. Friday's when things could really get moving. I know they don't love moves during the finals, but we did get one with Bane this week. So I think we'll have a couple more calm days here, and then things can really get going on Friday if that series ends there. So we'll probably check back with you later in the week. We got a couple interviews coming up this week with some Boston Celtics, Jimmy. I guess I'll tease the first one right now. We have Drew Peterson coming on the show this week. He's about to hit free agency.
That's exciting.
We obviously talked to Baylor Shireman a week ago, and then we have another Celtic coming on later in the week. We'll leave that one as a secret for now, but yeah, a lot of great guests coming up, and we'll get some draft people on. Try to understand.
You can't get these interviews anywhere else, folks. This is the place to go.
Yeah, so subscribe, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access. Get your Patriots content over on Patriot Press Pass.
Phil
Bruins
Pressey.
Talk. Phil Pressey, baby. I loved him as a player.
Let's get him on the show, Bobby. New head coach of the Maine Celtics, I see.
Good idea. Maybe Maine Celtics PR can hook that up. It wouldn't be a bad interview. Yeah, he's been cool to have around these last couple of years here, getting his coaching career going. That's always a good opportunity for guys coaching up in Maine there. You know, he'll see plenty of us, Jimmy. No one's going to ask Phil Pressey more questions next year than Noa Dalzell.
He's going to get to know you. He's going to get to know you. The restraining order will be filed.
All right. Thanks to Noah for hopping on earlier. John as well. Jimmy for going overtime here talking Red Sox. And turn those notifications on for when we go live later this week. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way? Let's fly Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke